two verses of the Holy Quran describe the crying by, you see their eyes overflowing with tears. But why crying is so described? Is there any reason in the use of this expression? Especially when through all known epochs, as well as the 7th century, when the Quran was revealed, such Arabic phrase was unusual, and even singular. To understand the significance of this description, I invite you to follow, briefly, the path traveled by the tears in the eyes. The main lacrimal gland, and lacrimal accessory glands, are responsible for the secretion of tears. They are situated in the upper outer portion of each orbit, in the lacrimal fossa of the orbit formed by the frontal bone. From the lacrimal glands, tears and tear film cross several ducts to reach the inner edge of the upper eyelid, from which they flow on the outer surface of the cornea and conjunctiva of the eye, in order to wash it, disinfect it, and raise its moisture content. Then, they reach the corner of the eye, or lacrimal lake, and rush in the lacrimal puncture, in order to pass through the upper and lower lacrimal ducts, to reach the lacrimal sac. From this reservoir, tears then head to the nasolacrimal canal, and rush finally, in the nasal cavity. But, in fact, this flow is not purely gravitational. Indeed, it is assisted by a pump which allows him to evacuate more easily tears to the nasal cavity. That happens during the flickering of the eye. Effectively, when the eyelid is folded back, muscle and ligament responsible for this are in a such state that the upper and lower lacrimal ducts will be under pressure, which would result to discharge the tear fluid they contain to the lacrimal sac, and from there to the nasal cavity. On the other hand, when the eyelid is raised, these muscles and ligaments are relaxed around the two tear ducts, knowing that their wall is elastic, their sections increases. Then they increase in the volume, and a depressurization appears within him, which has the effect of sucking the tears that had accumulated earlier in the lacrimal lake. Note that during the depressurization, the anti-reflux valve of Rosenmuller prevents any liquid return from the lacrimal sac to the two tear ducts. Thus, under normal conditions, to evacuate its tears, the eye has a pump that draws tears from the lacrimal lake, and discharges them to the lacrimal bag. However, in special conditions, such as during the sensation of pain, or sadness, or joy, or also when the eye is harassed, or even when you peel an onion, it emerges from it, the propaneal oxide, who in arriving to the eye reacts with tears water, to give sulfuric acid, very irritating to the eye. The glands secrete a greater amount of tears, the lacrimal pump is overloaded, the lacrimal sac is filled completely, then appears the flow of tears from the nose. At that time, the tears, being unable to take the lacrimal pump way, they overflow from the eyes, and roll down the cheeks. Finally, we conclude that tears flow in the eye, all the time, night and day, in a route inside the eye, and are therefore not visible from the outside. But during the crying, lacrimal glands are shedding too many tears. The lacrimal pump is racing, the lacrimal sac is overfilled, and tears appear at nose. At this moment, tears, which cannot be evacuated by this path, then they overflow the eyes, and stream down the face. Today, scientists define the crying by an overflow of tears from the eyes. It is precisely to this conclusion of overflow to which contemporary science has arrived, who is affirmed, unequivocally, twice, in the Holy Quran, since the 7th century. You will see their eyes overflowing with tears. This is the Quranic verse.
ترى أعينهم تفيض من الدمع مما عرفوا من الحق.
They turned back, while their eyes overflowing with tears. This is the Quranic verse.
تولوا وأعينهم تفيض من الدمع حزنا ألا يجدوا ما ينفقون.
Before closing, I would like to recall the following facts. 1. In the East, it was only in the 10th century that Ibn Sina, Avicenna I, described correctly the anatomy of the human eye and symptoms of cataract. 2. In the West, the dissection of the eye was made only in the 16th century. See Bérenger Carpi, Charles Estienne, etc. 3. It is possible, in describing the crying, someone would be tempted to use other expressions, such as, "You see their eyes filled with tears," or "their eyes flooded with tears," or "from their eyes flow the tears," "from their eyes gush the tears." Unfortunately, all of these descriptions do not warn us that before the crying, tears were already present, unlike the verb overflow. Indeed, if tears would overflow during crying, then implicitly, this demonstrates that before the crying, tears were already present. And precisely, such tears are their overflow. Contemporary science, culminated in this reality, and inevitably, has described the crying by the overflow of tears. 4. In the Holy Quran, crying is mentioned 6 times. 4 times by the verb crying, and 2 times by their eyes overflowing with tears, one in the passive form, and the other in the active form, but never with a verb other than overflow or crying. 5. Note, in Arabic literature, or in the spoken language, the phrase, eyes overflowing with tears, is not an usual expression. Nor in the 7th century, when the Holy Quran was revealed. Neither before the 7th century, nor even after it was employed by the Holy Quran. Now, in conclusion, let's ask this question to those who do not believe that the Holy Quran is the word of the Lord, Allah, the Almighty. How to explain the presence of this description of crying in the Holy Quran, with exactly the same description, overflow of tears, to which has arrived the contemporary science, while the Quran dates back to the 7th century, knowing that in the 7th century, the basic knowledge of the anatomy of the eye were derisory, or even non-existent. Thanks for your attention.